Okay, this is the last geometric shape, the most complicated one. It's a circle inscribed in a square with some grid pattern in the background, and then we've got some pie slices in the middle with a very specific angular measure between those pie slices. So how are we going to make this thing? Well, I'm going to start with this outer square. And the dimensions we're given are 10 units. So 10 units by 10 units. You could do that with a polyline or a rectangle. In this case, I'll start with a rectangle, and I will say 10 by 10. Move that back into our frame here. There is my 10 unit square. So the next step, I'm going to ignore the circle for a moment. The next thing I want to do is figure out this grid pattern in the background. Now notice it seems to be at a 45-degree angle, so we can verify that with these 45-degree lines meeting corner to corner. So I'll say this is a square grid at a 45-degree angle. Now the only other information that we can see is a distance of 1 unit between these vertices cutting across the square. So that's a little tricky. How are we going to do that? Well, there's a couple of different ways that you could do that. The first way I can think of is, or maybe one way, but a simple way, would be if I create a circle with a radius of 1 unit. So if I zoom in on this corner, let me put a circle over here with a radius of 1 unit. Notice that circle touches the outer square right at the vertices of this grid pattern. And if I did another circle with a radius of 1 unit, you can see that the spacing is perfect for that grid pattern. Now I could create a whole bunch of those circles and move them into the correct position, and I could figure out how to get exactly 1 unit between all of these vertices. So with those circles there, I would then have snap points to create polylines. So I could, let me demonstrate sort of a basic way, but definitely a long process. So I'm creating circles, I'm copying and pasting, so I have more circles, I'm moving them and snapping them. I suppose I don't really need those two, or this one. So every place that a circle crosses this line is 1 unit apart, and I could do that all the way around the perimeter, and that would give me at least a place to snap to. So let's see, I'll do it on one side. Let me copy and paste. And then let's say I want to move these over here and rotate them. I'll demonstrate a couple of different ways to get this done here, but I'm going to rotate that, and then I'm going to move it again like this. So all of these circles are showing me where the 1 unit snap point would be. At that point, I could come in, let me do polylines in a different color here. So I'm going to move to a different color just so you can see. But now I could snap to all of those snap points, 1 unit apart, which is a little tedious. That's maybe the long way to do it. Another way to find these points on a line, if they're evenly spaced, would be to use the divide command. So let me demonstrate the divide command. First, I have to explode this shape. So I use the rectangle command to create this object, which means it's now all one polyline. I'm going to type the explode command. Explode also has a button here in the modify panel of the ribbon. So I'll explode that object. That breaks it into its component pieces. So now I have 4 separate polylines instead of 1 rectangle. And with those component pieces, I can use the divide command. So when I use the divide command, I'll type it. I'll select object, I'll type the word divide, hit enter, and it will ask me how many segments do I want to split this line into. So how many segments will I need? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I suppose I could have done the math here. If this is 10 units and each spacing is 1 unit, then I must have 10 segments. So I'm going to need 10 segments. So I'll type the divide command, hit enter. It asks me to pick the object, and then how many segments. I'll type 10, hit enter. Now I have 10 segments. So when I grab this thing, I only see 3 grip edits, but if I turn on my node OSNAP, so go to your OSNAP menu, make sure you've got a check mark next to node. That gives you a snappable point along that line where it was divided. So I'm going to divide this other line on the bottom so I have some more snap points. I'm going to divide that into 10 segments, and now I'll start making polylines. So now I see I have nodes to snap to. I don't need those circles anymore, which is great. It cleans up my drawing a whole lot. The circles still give me snap points. So whichever way your brain works is the right way to do it. Even if it takes a little longer, as long as it is correct. So you can snap in both directions, which you will have to do. So there's maybe a quicker way to do this. Maybe I want to use the offset command to lengthen these, or let me do the quick way. So I'm going to create some polylines here, corner to corner. So let's say I want to use the offset command. Obviously, these are all parallel lines. Offset seems like an appropriate tool, but I would have to do some calculation here, algebra at the least, to figure out what is the offset distance. And it's never going to be perfect if you're trying to type in a decimal and it's not a perfect decimal. So I think the offset distance there works out to be something like the square root of 2 or root 2 over 2.704 something. And there's always going to be a rounding error, so your offset distance will always be incorrect unless when you go into the offset command and it asks you to specify that distance, instead of typing something in, I can snap between 2 points and it will take that distance. So if you've already created at least 2 of these parallel lines, now I can offset that same distance and really speed up the process. So you don't have to completely divide all 4 lines. You don't have to go through the process of making circles. But again, however your brain works, by doing this, I'm still going to have some trimming, obviously, but it will give me that grid pattern that I've been looking for. So let me quickly finish offsetting these. Obviously, I don't need these green circles anymore, so let me quickly get rid of those. I have so many green circles in this drawing that I just have to select them. I can't do a select similar. So let me, almost done. Couple more here. Okay, I've got them all selected. I'm going to delete those out. Now, a little bit of trimming here. I'm going to select them all the lines I want to trim, go into that trim command, and I can sort of bulk trim some of this stuff, at least to get started. I'll delete those lines later, but this is the quick and dirty way to do it. Use that same sort of click, release, and drag that you would use for your green or blue selection tools. So there's my green selection tool. I can delete that, delete that. Okay, so I've got the grid pattern. It's in the wrong color, so I can put it on the right layer. Let me select these lines, and let's put them on the solid green layer. And then the outer line, well, I should have that on the solid red layer. So just to be consistent, I will put them on the solid red layer. Okay, so I've got a circle inscribed in the center of this object. So I should be able to figure out where is the center of that object. And I drew a red circle in there. We're on the solid red layer. So I would have some more trimming to do. There's no grid pattern inside that circle. So again, I can select everything and use the trim command to sort of bulk trim some of this stuff. And my apologies, drafting can sometimes be a slow and tedious process. Just be careful about which lines you are trimming away. So getting close here. You may have to zoom in a little bit to make sure that you're getting absolutely all of the lines. Notice some of these cut across that circle a little bit. And I think I've got them, oh, almost all of them. So a little more trimming here. And I think I am done trimming. So I've cleaned all of that grid. Oh, I missed another one. Now I'm almost done. So a couple more trims. Now I think I'm done. So the last part is going to be the pie wedges in the middle. And they look like they're all uniformly spaced at 22.5 degrees according to the dimensions. So 22.5 degrees, what does that mean? Well, in a quadrant we have 90. Half of a quadrant would be a 45, and half of 45 would give us 22.5. So 4 quadrants, half of that would be 8 half quadrants, which means we must have 16 slices of the pie here at 22.5 degrees. There's a couple of ways to do that. Again, however your brain works, or however much you want to challenge yourself, you could try to do a polar array. That would probably be the most challenging. I'm going to use the brute force method. I'm going to create some polylines. And it looks like those are supposed to be on the gray, the solid gray layer. So find that solid gray layer. And now I think a little bit of copy and paste and rotate would probably benefit this project. So if I rotate it 45 degrees, when I snap it back into place, I am halfway there. So I just need sort of the halfway lines. We did our 90-degree lines. I just did 45-degree lines. So now we need 22.5. I'm going to copy all of those lines, paste them off to the side, select everything, enter the rotate command, select the center or whatever point around which you want to rotate, and enter your 22.5 degrees. With everything rotated, I can just move it back, and there I have that last shape. So a little more complicated, but I did that whole thing just with the draw and modify commands. So I created a rectangle, I created a circle, I made some polylines, we did some trimming, and I suppose I did use the divide command, which you can find I think there's a button for it. Maybe there's not. Anyways, type the divide command if you want to try dividing your line segments. That's a super useful command. And hopefully you get to something that looks like this.